Well, Sri Lanka is under curfew again tonight, and while police have made progress, saying they've identified 8 of the 9 bombers, they are also in crisis. The president has demanded the police chief resigns, but he's held out so far, unlike the defence secretary, who has quit amid the scandal over detailed warnings from India that weren't followed up or shared. The number confirmed dead has risen again to 359, and there are still bodies yet to be identified in the mortuaries. We now know much more about the attackers. Most were well educated and well off. One had studied in the UK and Australia. Porrick O'Brien has been to a copper factory owned by one of the 2 wealthy brothers who blew themselves up in luxury hotels. It's believed some of the bombs may have been made there.
Something about CCTV without sound pedestrianises everything, even an imminent terrorist attack. The Sri Lankan suicide bombers checked into the Shangri-La Hotel on Saturday night. Exchange a smile in the lift on their way to the breakfast buffet the following morning. It's on the 3rd floor. The bomb goes off soon after they walk in, as do multiple others across Sri Lanka. 2 of the bombers have been named as brothers Inshaf and Ilham Ibrahim. The pregnant wife of one of the brothers later detonated a device where they lived, killing everyone inside, including her other young children. The terrorist cell this family belonged to killed their own neighbours, thus the white funeral flags in the area where the 2 brothers grew up. The 2 brothers came from a very wealthy, very well-known family in this particular area. Their father, Ibrahim, who is currently being questioned by the police, owned the spice distribution shop here to the right of me, but he also owns a whole network of businesses around this area. One of his sons went on to start his own business, which was a copper factory to the east of the city. Inshaf Ibrahim, the older of the 2 brothers, was wealthy in his own right. His factory recycled copper wiring. This, according to reports, is where the shrapnel was assembled for the suicide bombs. Then upstairs we meet a large group of frightened migrant labourers from Bangladesh working and living in the factory. How many people have the police arrested here?
Here maybe 8 people arrested first day.
We were told that security services arrested 8 Sri Lankan people at the factory after the attacks, but left the Bangladeshi and Indian workers in situ. And can I ask you, have you ever seen anyone making a bomb here?
No. No.
Have you ever seen any sort of suspicious activity? No. According to the Islamic State video claiming responsibility for the attack, somewhere in this lineup, faces covered, the brothers Ibrahim. British security sources have told us that another one of the suicide bombers was called Abdul Latif Jamil Muhammad. They said he was living in the UK sometime back in 2006, but there was nothing to suggest at the time that he posed any threat. Finally, to the man who appears to be the ringleader in the centre of the video. His name is Zahran Hassim, a well-known YouTube radical preacher and leader of a local jihadist group. On last night's programme, a prominent Muslim leader told us that he'd warned intelligence officials in Sri Lanka about Hashim 3 years ago.
We handed over to them some CDs of this particular Maulavi Zahran, right, who was spewing hate against non-Muslims.
It's this sort of intelligence failure that prompted the President of Sri Lanka today to demand the resignation of the Defence Secretary and Chief of Police. Yoganandan Ramesh died at the St. Anthony's Church explosion. He worked loading trucks across the street from where the Ibrahim family spice business is. He probably knew the suicide bomber Inshad Ibrahim to see. His wife and 4-year-old boy buried him in haste yesterday because Colombo is running out of refrigerated morgues. His mother-in-law explained that every evening he used to put all he earned, which wasn't very much, on top of the fridge in the kitchen for the family to spend on food.
Well, as the police investigations continue, so have the funerals. At least 45 children were killed in the attacks, and their grief-stricken families are struggling to come to terms with their loss. I've been to the funeral of a 12-year-old girl and her mother near St. Sebastian's in Negombo. My report does, of course, include distressing scenes. They are burying the bodies at a stunning rate. This is the coffin of 12-year-old Tiana. Her father is inconsolable. 3 days of shock and grief boiling over as he is forced to say goodbye. He is burying his wife, Denisha, too. They were all in St. Sebastian's Church when the bomber hit. The priest who will conduct the burial was the head teacher in Tiana's school.
I know she has been involved in school activities, and especially she was in the Western band, so I knew her personally.
What was she like as a child?
She's a very innocent child, so sad to see.
How are you able to stay strong when the people around you are like this?
It's so difficult. It's so difficult. It's so sad what is happening. I've been visiting few families around, but then it's so sad. I also went for another funeral of another child, and he and two grandparents died, and father and the whole family is devastated by this incident once again.
It is a makeshift cemetery, donated from the garden of a local family, because the graveyard at church is full. And there is only time for a few minutes of prayer. He makes a final rush towards those he loved so much, before he and the crowd must make way for the next burial. It is an indecent haste. This is an absolutely extraordinary and heartbreaking scene. That the coffins just come in one by one, and the funerals are performed really quickly. People are in such terrible distress, they have to be led out, carried out almost as quickly as they arrive, because another coffin is coming in and needs to be buried. As we spoke, another distraught father was being carried away by his family and friends. How anyone can get over the trauma of these days is still hard to imagine. Well, I'm joined now by the Sri Lankan Science Minister, Sujiwa Senasinghe. How can anyone have confidence in the police investigation when the President, half of you are calling for the police chiefs to be sacked? Some people are even saying there's a case of manslaughter against them.
Well, we have to pick up the pieces and then start fresh, I think. And we have to trust the authorities, and we have to move forward. But at the same time, we need answers also for the mistakes that they have made.
Last night, the Prime Minister said there were bombers still on the run with explosives. Do you know if that's still the case?
That could be the case, but I think we have a lot of faith in the police system, even though they have made mistakes in this instance. I think they will do a good job within these few days.
I mean, a lot more is coming out about the bombers themselves. How shocking have you found the details, especially the kinds of families and communities they come from?
It's actually very surprising. We never thought that sections of this from societies from this background, people would get into something like this. So we are quite shocked. Even we are getting shocked day by day. We are getting shocked.
I mean, there's a picture that's just come up on the internet that seems to show you possibly meeting one of these bombers, giving his father an award for trade.
That's what I heard. In Parliament also, I think a couple of parliamentarians made comments on that, saying that Mahinda Rajapaksa, Maithripala Sirisena, the ex-presidents, and myself and other ministers also have given awards for the best export also to the father. And I could see potentially the suicide bomber also standing. I don't know whether that's an authentic picture, but I've seen that picture today on Facebook. So it's quite shocking. I have been next to him, if that is true.
But the messages coming out of the Sri Lankan government have been very confused, haven't they? You know, at first they were saying, no, ISIS had nothing to do with it. Now, you know, these ISIS videos are pretty convincing. And the Sri Lankan government is saying, yes, we're looking into this. And it seems as though bombers may have travelled to Syria.
No, I don't think the government said ISIS didn't have anything to do with it. They were actually investigating. We didn't know. Nobody knew how this actually occurred. The post-mortem is easy. Once the news comes and we get to know what has happened, then it's easy. But at the beginning, we didn't know where we got hit from. It was like another tsunami. We didn't know. It just all of a sudden this happened, and we didn't know where we got hit actually.
I mean, one of your colleagues yesterday in cabinet told me he thought it was possible that there was a scenario in which there had been a political conspiracy to allow this to happen. Do you share those sorts of fears?
You have a little bit of a doubt when you see the top police chiefs, 4 or 5 from the top, how inactive they had been when they got the information. From what we hear now, they have not given this information to the Prime Minister, they have not given this information to the President, and they have been writing letters to each other. So it's very unusual the way they have acted, and it's very irresponsible as well.
But isn't the truth that the government of Sri Lanka is just not functioning? The President and Prime Minister are really at odds with each other.
That's also another scenario, but like given that situation also, at least the police chief and the top ranking officers, when they got the information, they could have given the information to the Prime Minister or the President, and according to them, they haven't received any information. Even if the two President, the Prime Minister, and they were together functioning well also, if the information had not been given, then we face the same situation again.
Mr. Senasinghe, thank you very much indeed.